Jamie, thank you so much
Of
for
course.
sharing your time and coming here. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I love, I, like I said, I'm happy to share if I can help. I am always happy to help. And I hope that everybody today walks away with something that they can apply to their business or their job that really helps them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know no one has been brave enough to just jump in there. So I actually, before we totally start, I was wondering, Jamie, if you could just tell us a little bit about your background.
Oh, my favorite question. Okay, so my name is Jami Dennis. I have been in the nanny and in-home staffing industry for about 25 years now. I actually started as a part-time nanny in college, became a full-time nanny after college while I put my husband through graduate school. And connected with Ginger, my business partner at ABC Nannies, 21 years ago. So, dating myself here. So, I think I've been able to see the business as I've been able to experience the industry as a nanny, as an agency owner, and I have two children now, 15 and 11. But I was fortunate enough to have three great nannies and one spectacular family assistant for those 10 years where I needed help. So I also, in addition to ABC, own a temp staffing franchise. We own three franchises of the Jovi franchise, and that's our like sitter and backup care kind of wing. And then we have ABC that does all of our long term. So over the past 20 years, I've kind of done every part of the business, like every small business owner. So I'm happy to answer questions, whether it's about backup care or long term or starting a new business or employing temp nannies, whatever it is I can help with.
Amazing. Thank you.
Oh, and I should say, Danny, I've been on the APNA board, the Association of Premier Nanny Agencies. I've been on that board for over a decade, and I'm currently the active president.
Amazing.
So you can ask me about that too.
I will ask you, how's being the president going?
Oh, it's
People
pretty
call
good.
you
You know,
President?
Please do. No, I was the vice president for Ginger, my business partner, was the president for many years, and I watched her and Barbara Klein before me. So I've had great mentors to help me. I love our industry. I love giving back to our industry. So it's a real passion project for me.
Amazing. I will start us off. I have a question, and I know I've been talking, but everybody really, truly feel free to jump in. I mean, I'm going to pick Jamie's brain if you guys don't. But I suppose, like, what inspired you to go with the nanny agency route when it comes to starting and owning businesses and being in that industry?
Hmm. I think sometimes I could craft a story, Danny, right? I think we could all craft a story about how, like something that would really sell it. But to be honest, I was a women's studies major in college. I got my master's in sociology and focused on women and children, mostly in poverty and risk factors. So my entire life, I've been super passionate about helping women and children. When I became a nanny, I found a great outlet for supporting families. And then when I figured out that there were nanny agencies, because I didn't even know they existed, I was like, hey, I'd be good at that. Like, that's something I'm really passionate about. And then when I got into the job, I realized it is a lot more than just helping families, right? I had to learn how to become a business owner, a manager. I had to understand what being an entrepreneur meant and how to manage that in my own life. Um, so for me, it's just been a really natural progression. Um, Over the course of my life. Do I think maybe I'll start other businesses? For sure. But this is the one I love what I do. Um, and I feel really fortunate to do it. So.
Amazing. Does anybody have any questions for Jamie? I believe, yeah. Jamie, this is from
Yeah.
Emily.
I
Uh,
threw one out there. I didn't want to take over, interrupt, but I threw out that question. I thought we could all learn from hearing Jamie and her expertise.
Amazing.
Thank
Do you
you.
wanna just share it?
Yeah. So totally general, but I think it's a good question for anyone that we're giving the spotlight in terms of their expertise. And Jamie, you bring a lot, right? What are the biggest challenges that you are witnessing now in the current market? And how does that compare to prior markets? I'm thinking of what I have been through, like 9/11 and the downturn in 2008, and how that compares to what we're going through right now, which is unique and different. And if you had to pick two or three of the biggest challenges that you are experiencing from where you are, how can we learn from that?
That's a great question, Emily. So I will say, I told Danny, my dad used to say, if you want an if you don't want an honest answer, don't ask Jamie. Because it's just like, here it comes. I will say the last couple of years have been such a roller coaster as an agency owner. Like we had a banner year and then we went backwards a little bit. And now we're still like Q1 used to be one of our best quarters. And now over the last 2 or 3 years, it has become one of our worst quarters. So, it feels like there isn't a pattern that I can really get my hands around, which is stressful as an entrepreneur, not to know like, hey, here is kind of the cyclical nature of my business, but at least I have an idea of what it's going to look like. That I feel like has been totally obliterated in the last couple of years. So I don't know if anybody else is feeling like that, but I used to think I knew when our revenue was going to come in and I could kind of predict our growth. And I can predict downturns in the market. I don't have that anymore. And that for me, as a small business owner, has been super challenging. This year, I think we're also running into, people are talking about the soft landing, recession, things like that. In Colorado, we're really seeing people kind of hold on to their money and try to find ways to find a nanny or a family assistant or a household manager where they don't have to pay a fee. And that feels more prevalent. We're seeing the rise in, like more Facebook nanny groups and great nannies finding jobs there. Where I feel like, in 2019, they were there, but they weren't quite as prevalent as they are now. So I feel like our consultants have really had to change the way they sell our services in the last couple of years. Really, and I call them consultants because I feel like it's really changed, right? It used to be we had so many clients coming in that we were salespeople. Now, when clients come in, we're really consulting with them and trying to understand what they need. And we have changed the way that we're selling our service. So that has been, I think, a really positive change for our business, but also for the industry as a whole. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, Emily. Something will probably come to me, but I do also think, the nature of remote work is hard. So we've really had to focus in the last, before the pandemic, we had a brick and mortar office. We all came together. We were like old school. And now, we have employees living in Nebraska and Chicago and Florida. So we have really tried to create a culture and create some like consistency, things that people can grab onto as staff members to really feel like they're part of our team. And that for me has also been a challenge because we were in an office together for 15 years. So these last couple of years, I've had to learn how to be a better leader, even if I don't see you. So I would say those are probably my top three, Emily.
Wow, thank you. I'm sure everybody here agrees with me that that was just really, really valuable. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
you're welcome.
Well, Bailey has a question, and I'll read it. But Bailey, if you have anything to add to it, I'll just, you can go for it. She says, "I'd love to hear about backup care and what you feel the pros and cons are. We do babysitting for clients where families pay a booking fee, but do not employ any of our babysitters. I'm nervous to jump into the backup care game!" Exclamation point.
Okay, that's a good question. So we have been doing backup care. I started it like I remember where I was when I got my first call for backup care. And I held that backup care phone and had two phones in my purse for like 7 straight years. So thankfully, I don't do that anymore. We have two people who run our backup care program. But I think I'll start with like the positives of backup care. As a small business, reoccurring revenue is super valuable. And when you have somebody feeding you jobs, like, Bright Horizons or Care or whomever is, whomever you're working with, I think that reoccurring revenue is super valuable. Um, I also think, I'm trying to think of the other upsides. I mean, for me, it's definitely the reoccurring revenue, right? The downside, Bailey, I think is, we are kind of a cog in a wheel, right? Like you're used to doing like a 1-to-1 match, and you get more information about the family, and then you can match them with a great babysitter for Saturday night that they're going to love. In backup care, you don't get that. It's really like, here are the case like logistics, and who do you have that matches that case that will drive there and has that availability. So it kind of takes that boutique like experience out of it, which is hard to digest if that's all you've ever done, because you want to do that, but there's just no way to do that on a massive scale. From an employment standpoint, I've had a couple people reach out recently like, hey, what do you think about doing this? So we've done it, we did the like referral-based temp for a very long time. Then we bought into the college nannies franchise. I think I saw Terry Stark here. Hi, Terry. We bought into that franchise about 7 years ago, really to kind of bolster our backup care. So we have anywhere from 30 to 40 nannies on staff through our Jovi franchises now. I think the hard part about employing your nannies is just like the overhead, Bailey. I mean, my rule of thumb is always, if you can get a bill rate that is twice the pay rate, your margins are probably going to support that business and it'll be worth doing. But if you're paying $20 an hour and making $30 an hour, the insurance and the employment costs are going to eat at that margin to the point where I'm not sure it's even worth it. So, again, we're still doing it and we do a lot of it. But it's not an easy business. Like, you have to really be committed in those first couple of years, to develop and grow it.
That was amazing. I learned so much from that. Thank you. Speaking for everyone, right? Amy here, well, she didn't say this, but Amy from Eastwind Nannies joining from Thailand, so she's not turning on her camera because her family's asleep. We get it.
Hi, Amy.
Where do you see backup care on call going in the next few years? Our long
Man, I wish I had a magic, like some sort of, I have no idea, Amy. What I think that I'll give you my opinion, I guess. I think that childcare is critical to like the foundation of our country. So I believe that the demand will be consistent, if not grow, because employers right now, when unemployment is so low, they're looking for ways to bring in new employees, to entice new employees, and to keep them. So I think we're going to see probably more diversification in the number of companies that are doing backup care. There are a couple key players. I expect to see more of those. I expect to see continued demand for it. I also expect to see, the ongoing struggle of trying to find good people who will do the job, who are available and like, going to different homes at different times, taking care of different kids all week long. That's a challenge. I also anticipate that we're going to run into, the continued challenge of overhead with, or slim margins when we talk about, if you're making $30 an hour, but you're paying 20. I think there's always going to be that, that kind of riff, like we believe we should be making more so we can pay our employees more, where the backup care companies also have margins that they're trying to maintain, where they're trying to suppress our margins to make their margins. So, I would say I expect it to be the same or grow over the next 5 years. But I think if it's not already really hard for you to staff, I think it's going to continue to get harder to find great people to staff the demand. But that's totally opinion based there.
That's fantastic. Marilyn Ann asks, how do you make sure your temp team is trained
Oh,
to follow your SOPs? I'm not familiar with that one. You probably are.
so standard operating procedures, I suppose.
I knew that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, how do I make sure our temp, so we have, one employee whose entire job is to manage our temp team. So when we hire someone, so after they go through the interview, reference check and background check process, we then have an hour and a half kind of training session with them where we go through all of our expectations, our standard operating procedures, from like what we expect them to leave behind or do with the children during the day, what to do if something goes wrong, like how many times and when to contact families before care happens. So that hour and a half long training is really important. But what we also realized over the course of the last 10 years is it's a ton of information to absorb. So we've pulled out some of it and automated it, Marilyn, where we now take pieces like, hey, here are 10 things, top 10 things you should be doing during your backup care day. Here are the top 3 complaints from backup care families and how to avoid them. So we are taking those and we've pieced them out and we're sending them to them during the first 4 weeks of employment so that I think it's more digestible. But we also, we still have the 30-day, 90-day, and 1-year reviews with every one of our backup care nannies where we look at their feedback scores, the feedback from families, their availability, and if they're meeting their availability. So we keep a pretty tight connection with them just to maintain quality.
Awesome.
I hope that answered your question.
I really like this next. Marilyn says that's awesome info. Thank you. Are you doing your automation training through Enginehire? There's a couple of these questions that I'll just pair this with the next one too that says, how did Enginehire help you to be where you are now? So here you go, Jamie. Love this.
Okay. Well, so we don't use Enginehire. We love Enginehire and I know they have a great product, but we had developed a software system before Enginehire came onto the scene. So we are still using that. And it's a combination of different tools that we use. But as a franchisee of the Jovi franchise, all of our training is done through them. So I will say that's one of the upsides is that, the training has already been done for us and they take the training. Bright Horizons has trainings that they make caregivers take. So I find that super helpful from the backup care standpoint. But again, I think there's only so much they can absorb from like video trainings or even even those even those consultations we do after they're trained. So I think just the automation, I mean, you could use Zapier if you wanted to, but I'm sure Enginehire has a great solution. But I do think, spacing out the information has really helped improve our quality scores.
Amazing. Thank you. Thanks for your honesty, Jamie.
Yeah, of course.
Well, that's the pause in our questions for now, but I have more for you if you're
have at it.
How did you set up your pricing and fees for everything that you're doing? How did you know that you were being, I don't know, all of those things that go into why pricing is complicated?
So, so pricing, to me, pricing and margins have to go hand in hand, because if you don't know how much it costs to staff something, you don't even know how to price it. You're just guessing, right? You can look around at what your competitors are doing. You can get an idea of what the tolerance is in the market for pricing. But for us, you know, our numbers, I look at our P&L. Let's say I look at March's P&L. That's historical data, right? It's not future predictive data. So if I'm trying to set pricing, and every year we look at our pricing, I'm really looking at what it costs me to staff each individual job, whether it's a backup care job or a short-term job or a long-term placement. What are my margins on each one of those services? And then where do I have wiggle room if we want to be more competitive and like reduce our fees? Where do I have wiggle room because I'm making good margins? Or where do I know that I need to increase our fees because our margins are too tight to sustain the business? So that's how I look at pricing, Danny. You know, with backup care, they give you a price. You can always negotiate, and you should try real hard to do that. But they give you a bill rate there. And then you can run your margins to see if in your market it's even worth doing.
Perfect. I think that actually ties in with Emily's question, which is, are you willing to speak to your standard amount of time you are able to keep backup care employees and attrition rate? This was a huge barrier for us with Care and Bright Horizon contracts. Thank you so much. This is all amazing.
Okay, so there was, I think, a couple parts there. So the amount of time we're able to keep BOOK employees or employees, that's a really good question. So about 3 or 4 years ago, we did an exercise with our temp team. And it was actually an idea from Wendy Sachs, who's an expert at all things backup. Well, really all things. I was going to say backup care. She's great at everything. But when it comes to, you know, operational things, she's brilliant. And she said, hey, you have to identify who is your ideal backup care nanny. And I thought I knew what that was, Emily, until we did this exercise where we really looked at our history, like who was with us the longest, you know, like who was with us 6 months or more. And as a backup care nanny, that's really, 6 months is great. If we can keep them 6 months, we're super happy. So we looked at individuals who've been with us 6 months, a year and a half, 2 years, and we looked at who they were, you know, what level of education they had, you know, what age ranges were they in, where were they located, you know, what their interests were. We tried to build out like our ideal backup care nanny looks like X. Right? And then we began recruiting based on that ideal. We know that we can pick up part-time backup care nannies, but for us, our best backup care nannies are the ones who are full-time. They work for us 35 to 40 hours a week. Those individuals tend to stay with us longer. You know, like every temp company, we get people who sign on and they're excited and they work 2 weeks and realize the job isn't for them. We get some that stand us up when we've already done their background checks and their reference checks, and they stand us up for the training because they found something else. So that happens no matter how good your processes are or how good you are at the job. It's bound to happen. It hurts every time it happens, but it's bound to happen. But I think, you know, laying out who your ideal nanny, a backup care nanny is a really good place to start. And that's just based on historical data. But most of ours, if they make it past those first 2 weeks, are with us anywhere from 6 months to about 18 months is how long most of our backup care nannies are with us. Did I answer all the...
Yeah, no, keep going. Sorry.
No, I was just trying to remember if there was another part there. Anything else, Emily, that I didn't answer?
No, I really appreciate that. Thank you, Jami.
Yeah, of course.
Amy asks, what ideas do you have to lead a remote team?
Amy, do you have any ideas? This one's hard. I mean, I think we do everything, you know, I don't think we're doing anything super innovative. We follow the traction model. So I don't know if you guys know Traction by Gino Wickman, but it was one of the first business books that I read where I was like, okay, we should adjust how we run this business based on this model. So if you don't know Traction, you should look it up and read it. But we have a stand-up meeting every day for our long-term team and our temp team where they connect on video for 10 to 15 minutes and really talk and lay out their day and their goals and, you know, what they need from each other, any problems that they're having that they need support on. So those stand-up meetings are super important. We do the weekly, we do a weekly meeting with our team. Again, in Traction, it lays out exactly how you should be doing it and what you should be talking about. So that weekly team meeting is mandatory. It's every Tuesday at 10 a.m. You do not get to schedule anything else. You have to be there. So that weekly meeting keeps us connected. We know what what everybody is doing, but it also gives us, we start with what was the best part of your week last week? That's how we start. Like, tell me something you're really proud of that you did or that happened last week. I think sharing those things helps. We try to get together once a quarter as a staff in person and do something fun, whether it's Topgolf or, this time, we just had a big nanny event where we hosted a big, like a pizza party for our nannies, and our team came back. So we try to make that happen once a quarter. And then Slack keeps us connected day in and day out. We're slacking each other back and forth, back and forth. We also do coffee. We do coffee and chat once a month. So if I seem a little jazzed, it's because I had 3 cups of coffee this morning for our coffee and chat. That's at 10:30 on the second Thursday of every month. So those coffee and chats, we don't talk business. We just talk like we would if we were having coffee together. Like, hey, how's it going? How's your daughter? Who's sick? Who's not? And we try to lead that meeting with some sort of icebreaker, like, tell me, one fun thing we don't know about you that we should know. Just again, to give us an opportunity to connect outside of the work itself. But I'd love to know other people's ideas.
Throw your other ideas in the chat, people.
Yeah.
Bailey says, what are your recommendations for learning how to be a better business owner / entrepreneur?
Well, I mean, I don't love reading nonfiction, if I'm being honest with you. I'm a fiction girl, but I try to read one business book a month. Right now, I'm reading 10x is easier than 2x. It's a little bit of a snoozer. I try not to read it before bed, but it's a really good book. And I think, just expanding your mind beyond the day-to-day is super important when you own a business. I think what we get caught up in the day-to-day and forget to think about the long term. Like, you can't work in your business and on your business at the exact same time. So I think just educating yourself is super important. I think for me, APNA was a game changer. When I attended my first APNA conference and saw how many people were doing the same thing that I was doing, and I was able to learn from people like Wendy Sachs and Barbara Klein, and hear how they're handling different things, and then get ideas on ways to grow my business, whether it was starting like new lines of revenue or just improving what we were currently doing. I mean, I've gone to, with the exception of one where we had a death in the family, I've gone to every APNA conference since I started. So this will be, it'll be 20 years. It has totally, I always walk away with something that I can implement in our business that is useful. So setting aside money to attend an APNA conference, share a room, stay off site, just come. There are lots of scholarships available. Enginehire has hosted and supported those scholarships for the last 5 years. If you're not there yet, we also have an accelerator program that's tremendous, really made for agency owners who are like at 250,000 and below, who have established a business but really are looking to grow the business. The accelerator's a great opportunity. And about a year and a half ago, I joined an organization called EO, the Entrepreneurial Organization. And that was also like a game changer for me. So now, instead of only learning from my peers, which I love, I'm also learning from entrepreneurs who own businesses in totally different sectors. And while it seems like it might not be that useful, it's been an incredible tool for me to hear the things they're doing in their business that I have not thought about doing in ours. So I've really enjoyed EO, but I would say for this group, APNA, INA, I think if you can attend the webinars and the conferences, and join one of the many programs we have, like we have a leadership program, we have an accelerator program. There are all kinds of ways to learn and grow, but those are the ways that have helped me the most.
James from Nanny and Me says, I'm in the UK. We have a couple of companies providing platforms for parents to list their jobs and find nannies, which is eating into some of our target market. Coupled
Totally.
into the financial issues everyone is going through, it seems like a no-brainer for many parents. I'm guessing it's the same in the US. How is this impacting your company, and what are you doing to overcome these challenges?
We should have an entire webinar on how, Bailey, I know you're here. We should have an entire webinar on how to manage, like how to sustain your business when there's so much free competition. But I think we've really, I just wrote a blog about it for nannies, like, hey, the reasons you should go with a reputable agency versus a job board or finding a job on your own. Not only are we losing families to these Facebook groups, but we're also losing candidates to it. With regards to families, I think it's a lot about education. I think families think they're doing a really good job screening and they have no idea, right? Like we just had a nanny who had found 3 jobs on a Facebook group. Her last 3 jobs were through a Facebook group. We use Scout Reference, and they figured out that her last 3 references all came from the same IP address. So they were totally fake. And this gal has been working for what, a decade? Taking care, well, she says she's been working for a decade. We don't even know, right? It's all fake. So I think as an industry, we really need to start talking about what we do that makes us different. And for us, it's not just the interviewing and the background checks. Those are the 2 things that families think about most. I think it's the vetting. And we do better, more extensive vetting. We know who's good and we know who's not. So as much as you can talk about your expertise and like how you're different and why it's a value, like if one thing shouldn't be a DIY, it should be who hiring somebody to care for your children. Like, hey, DIY your bathroom remodel, but don't DIY finding somebody to take care of your baby, right? It's just not worth the risk. So that's kind of the way we've talked to our staff about handling price objections, or, hey, I have this, connection to hire on my own. All right, go for it. But here are some things to think about. But if anybody has other ideas, I legitimately would love to know, because it is also eating away at our business little by little, but it all makes an impact.
Marilyn asks, are you constantly recruiting for your on-call team?
Constantly recruiting. Because there is more attrition with our on-call department than any other, right? And also because the demand continues to grow and we're trying to keep up with that demand. So, We use Indeed, and you know, we have a good referral program. We do all the same things you guys are doing, but we are constantly recruiting. And talk about a downside. There you go. There's another expense that you don't think about, is just the sheer amount of recruiting required to sustain a good backup care business. So not only the recruiting costs, but the background checks and the reference checks, everything that goes into getting that person ready to do a backup care job, in addition to like the payroll expenses and the insurance. We're constantly recruiting, and it is very, very expensive.
We have a question. What qualifications and standards does ABC Nannies typically require of their childcare providers, and how does the agency ensure that these caregivers are capable of providing excellent care for children?
We're pretty open about our standards. It's all on our website, laid out really clearly. I guess that's just my MO, right? Open book. But you know, we have the same standards as almost everybody else. You know, X amount of, you know, 2 or 3 years of professional experience that can be verified. You know, all the different things that are required of us. I think that, like I just said, I think the interview is super important, and we train our team in behavior-based interviews, but we also say, hey, we hired you because you know what you're talking about. You know what you're doing. You're an expert in this field. Use your intuition. If you feel like, hey, something's off here, I don't think she's going to be great for kids. For us, it's families first, right? Like, yes, I'd love to have a pipeline of 150 great career nannies, you know, that I can just pick from. But for us, if we have a feeling that they're not going to be great for kids, we always err on the side of like, we're going to pass. Thank you very much. But I think those crucial, like the behavior-based interviews and the reference checks and the background checks are really important. Don't skimp on those, especially the background checks. I think having a really great provider there is super important. But like guaranteeing how they'll perform on the job, I don't think we can, right? We can give them tools and advice and tips. Same with our clients. You know, we can give them tools to maintain a great relationship with their nanny. But I always say to clients who are upset, like, let's say a nanny didn't work out, we say we can't control human behavior. We can't control the choices they're going to make on the job, or if they're getting divorced, or their husband is moving and they're going to go with them, or, you know, whatever it is. She went on a fast and locked herself out because she's, you know, not thinking clearly. I mean, we've seen it all, right? But we always tell our clients, like, we'll be here to help when things go wrong. We can't control their behavior once they're on the job, but if something happens, we'll be here and we'll help you through it. So James, I mean, I'm sure that doesn't answer your question, but if you have other ways of doing it that would help us, I'd be open to hearing it all. We'd all, I'm sure, love to know.
Next question from Bria from Heaven's Reflection Nanny Agency. What advice and/or encouragement would you give to a new agency owner, 1 to 3 years existing, when they feel as though they aren't as far along or successful as they should be?
Bria, is that what you said her name was?
Yep.
Bria, I am 20 years in and feel the same way every day. Before the webinar started, I said to Danny, like, I think, you know, most entrepreneurs really struggle with imposter syndrome. Like, hey, am I really good enough to be doing this? Am I doing as well as I should be? Like, you know, and then you see a peer who's doing great and you're like, hey, what's happening with me? Like, what should I be doing? I think just being cognizant of that the fact that we all are feeling it, most of us are feeling it, and most of us are dealing with it on a daily basis, is a good start. But I think those first 3 years are super critical. I mean, I'm just going to say it again. I think the accelerator program would be a really smart move. Like learning the foundations of running a profitable business is something that most of us never had. I didn't have that in college. I had to learn it the hard way, through different trainings. But I think the APNA accelerator program would be a great place to start for somebody in that 1 to 3 year kind of time period. Trying to think anything else, Danny, that I would give. I would just say, it's the same thing I tell our team every month, like just do good work, and focus on the things that matter. Don't get distracted by the things that don't make you money or don't make an impact. I mean, read 10X is easier than 2X in those first 3 years, because it's one of those that outlines like, hey, you're probably spending way too much time doing things that aren't moving your business forward instead of focusing most of your energy on the things that are. So that would be my advice in the first 3 years, but it's advice I still give myself to this day.
Wonderful. Abby George from Sand Hills Nanny Co. For backup care, exclamation point. Do you expect nannies to contribute to their background check / drug test costs for backup care? We have a normal $48 fee that I'm really considering eliminating. But whenever I've tried this, the nannies tend to abandon the process halfway through and show lack of commitment. Do you expect a fee or just take it as a loss?
So we don't charge our nannies anything. I went to a presentation, I think it was like last year's virtual conference, where Sue Downey was like, hey, make them have some skin in the game. They need to pay something, right? And I heard that. I think about it a lot. But with our nannies, we cover all the costs. And we don't charge them. I'm sure there are agencies that do. And if they have some skin in the game, but is $48 going to keep them there? I don't know. But at ABC and like the Jovi franchises, I'm not aware of anybody that charges for the reference or backup care, background checks, and passes that on to the employee.
Amazing. Jen Hassett, in this unique market, how do you determine when it is needed to hire additional office staff? We have had so many ups and downs in revenue. Our profit margins last year struggled because we were overstaffed. Now I'm nervous to hire again.
Jen, I hear you. I think it's one of the hardest parts about owning a small business is the staffing, like, when to hire, when to fire, who to hire, who not to hire. Again, ours, it's what we just talked about with Emily. What I said, one of the hardest things about the last 3 years is just this, right? Like, how do you maintain this? So it depends on what kind of business owner you are. Are you somebody who's more conservative and you want to just wait until your existing staff feels like they're going to burst and then hire? Or do you want to hire preemptively and have that then you should hire a salesperson to really go get their own business and bring it back, right? So I don't have an answer for you, except for it's a hard thing. I personally would always rather be a little bit understaffed than overstaffed, because I'm pretty conservative when it comes to our margins and our baseline, where if I feel like my team is stressed out because they have so many jobs on the board or so much going on, I'll step in personally to take on that extra stuff until we can hire a new employee. But, Ginger gave me some great advice a long time ago. She's like, we should always be looking for great people to join our team. Like, we have a pipeline of people where when I feel like things are about ready to, like, it's time now, they're stressed out and I'm now working 50 hours a week again instead of 30. Then we go back to that pipeline of people that we've had coffee with when we didn't need an employee, but we're like, hey, she was awesome. Let's hire her. Let's see if she's still looking. So That's kind of an indirect answer, Jen, but I don't know, but that's, I mean, that's how we make our decision, is like how much business is on the board and how are our employees operating. If I add a new employee, can I cover their costs in the first year with what we bring on?
Jen, do you need any follow-up to that?
No, it was super helpful. I don't know if you know, but I'm pregnant. So I'm going through this like
Ah.
big fear of like, of course, when I'm on maternity leave, we're going to need something. But also just last year was so tough. So I'm like really struggling with the decision of like, do I hire an extra person because I'm going on maternity?
Well,
It's-
and normally I would say, well, first, congratulations. And then I would say, when are you going on maternity leave? Because then we could say, hey, that's probably going to be a slow period. You should be okay. But with the last 3 years, I don't even know when our slow period is, right? So, um,
Yeah.
I mean, do you feel like your entire staff is maxed out right now?
Um, well, right now in the moment today, yes, but 2, 3 weeks ago, no.
Totally.
And that's the thing is it's so short term that we get really busy. And I stepped in, but I've been completely out trying to like test the waters on how it's going to be. And I'm not even leaving until August, but I want to see like how they're doing without me to gauge if I need to hire someone. And today I feel like, yes, I do. But then I'm wondering in 2 weeks, will I even feel like that?
Totally. It's hard to know. Right now, it's hard to know. I don't know if it's just us. I mean, raise your hands or put something in the chat. If it's just us that it's seeing this, like really, we're seeing more volatility than we've ever seen before in our business. And as somebody who is I like being able to I liked knowing that Q4 and Q2 were our slowest. I liked knowing that I could budget based on that. That's no longer the case, unfortunately.
Marilyn,
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, and let me know if I can help.
Marilyn asks, can you elaborate on the behavioral interview?
It's just so, Marilyn, what I can do is send you an email with kind of the resources that we used. Kim Weinblatt actually did a session. I think it was Kim and Lindsay maybe, did a session at APNA on behavior-based interviews. And how you change the questions versus like standard interviews you tend to lead the individual to the right answer with the way you phrase the question, where behavior based is, exactly like what it sounds like. Tell me about a time when, and you let them really do most of the talking. And during that behavior based question, you can assess like a lot of different things beyond them just saying what the correct answer is to the question. They're really giving you more insight into how they handle different situations. So I'll send you an email and I'll see if I can find that presentation that Kim and Lindsay did too.
Amazing. Natalie Hudson asks, do you have any experience hiring staff from outside the US, VAs from the Philippines?
We do. I know there are a couple people on this call that also have remote workers. So we have had 3. Thankfully, most of them stick around, but we've had 3 Filipino-based employees. And I have learned some things about managing them, like culture. There are some cultural differences that I think you really need to consider when you hire and when you manage individuals from the Philippines. But I think, for us, we've seen success just saying, hey, it doesn't matter to me if you live in Nebraska or Chicago or Denver or the Philippines. You're as much a part of our team and as valuable a team member there as you would be here. And I think that's something different than they get from a lot of companies they work for. I have gotten the impression they feel pretty dispensable in a lot of the positions they've had. They're really like contract labor and nothing more, where we very quickly try to integrate them into our team and make sure that they understand that mistakes happen and it's okay, and there's a learning curve and we expect it, and that if you feel frustrated, don't just bounce with an email and say, I'm out of here. I mean, that does happen. I think having those conversations up front with the remote employees really helps, but then ensuring that you have those conversations throughout your time with them helps, keep them with you long term.
Amy asks, do you have any contracts directly with companies for backup care, or are all jobs through a third party like Bright Horizons/Care? We've started to reach out to local companies to take out the middleman, but it feels like a time suck, and I'm not sure where to invest my time to grow our backup care on call.
Okay, that's a really good question. This is totally opinion based here, everything. But if it were me, I'd grow and build a backup care business where there is reoccurring revenue being fed to you from a third party. And when you feel like you've reached your limit there, or you've really got that down, then I would look at bringing on individual contracts outside of those. So every provider, care.com and Bright Horizons, they have different parameters on who you can target as a small business for backup care. So you need to take that into consideration before you do anything. But then for us, the time suck is not only finding and identifying the companies, but then creating like a sales funnel for those companies and trying to figure out the pricing, the pricing model that you use. It is a big endeavor. There are a couple people in the market that are doing it really well. And I would encourage you to reach out to those individuals to see how they might be able to help you. But we do small contracts, but most of our backup care is through a third party.
Amazing. That's all the questions we have at the moment, and we're near time. So yes, somebody Evan threw in a great comment for everyone to read. Yeah, I guess I have one question before we just totally wrap this up for you. You had mentioned earlier when you do your remote, or actually your coffees with your team, and you said that there was a thing about like the thing that they should know about you that they don't know. And I'm wondering if you have one of those for us.
Yeah, we just did this as like a icebreaker with our team. One thing that people might not expect, or they don't know about you, even people who know you well. Let me think I mean, I love dancing. I love to dance, but I think most people don't expect. I primarily listen to hip hop only. I mean, it's basically my kids are like, turn this down, mom. But for me, that's something I think most people don't expect or don't know about me. But you can find me at the Run the Jewels concert or something like that. If it's here, I try to go. So if anyone wants to talk hip hop, reach out.
It seems like you might have some hip hop lovers that will reach out.
They should.
Well, Jami, truly, thank you so much for sharing your time with us, answering so many questions. Yeah, we just really love this, and thank you so much for
Yeah, anytime, and feel free. I will always, like I said, I feel really passionate about helping small business owners, especially women small business owners, like grow and develop. So if you have questions or I can help you, don't hesitate to reach out. Jami at ABC.
Thank you so much. And everyone, thank you so much for joining and giving us so many wonderful questions. And have a great rest of your day. And we'll post this as soon as we can.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Danny. And thank you to Enginehire for everything they're doing for the industry. We appreciate you.
Gosh, thank you.